discuss the topic entitled Why SPLAT and its process, which stands for Supporting Parents, Learners, Administrators, and Teachers. May I call on the President of the Right Size Education Technologies Incorporated, Mr. Christopher Hancock. A pleasant day, sir.
Well, very, very warm welcome and good morning to you all. I am delighted to be here and honored to be invited to be part of your presentation. My name is Christopher Hancock and I am the president of RightSize, and we are a software development company here in Ortigas, right here in Metro Manila. I'm an American. I commute back and forth. I have clients in the United States and an amazing, amazing team of 50 plus PACs here in Ortigas that help me develop software for our US clients. We have written a piece of software specifically for DepEd that is targeted at helping the DepEd educators have more time to be educators and to spend less time doing the bureaucratic parts of education, the filling of forms, the spreadsheets, the reporting and the reporting and the reporting and the reporting, because when we asked our focus groups of teachers what they wanted most was to do what they were trained and are passionate about, which is to be educators. Because I don't believe anybody goes to school and on to higher education to learn how to be better at Excel, except for financial analysts maybe, but certainly not educators. So we have spent the last 6 years working with Philippine schools to try to understand how, as a software development company, we can make education work slightly better. Our focus has never been on the private sector. We think the private sector has enough money to help themselves. So we are very focused on helping the public sector schools, not just in NCR, where of course everything has lots of money and works easily, but especially in the provincial school systems, what we call the last mile schools, those island or mountainous schools where connectivity and power sometimes can be a challenge to the things we all take for granted here in the NCR. So I have a presentation today, which I have skinnied down quite a bit. I'm certain it will not be as inspirational and as heartwarming as Sir Elmer's, but I'll do my best because that's a tough act to follow. I think you all might agree. So I just a few screens for you to share. So let's get started here. So the software is called SPLAT, and that does stand for, as you just heard, supporting parents, learners, administrators, and teachers. And of course, it made a better word, but supporting the parents was a super important part to us. And I think it's somewhat symbolic that it appears early in our acronym, because not only are we trying to reduce the administrative effort on teachers, as you will see as I go through this presentation, we think that the parents and the community of parents is vital to moving the educational system a notch ahead. We think that you have some parents out there who would love to be more informed about what's going on in their learners' academic progress so that they, as parents, could intervene. As Sir Elmer just said, the house also needs to be a place where studying can happen. And if your child or the children of your group are in an environment where they're in a school with reduced working hours because of overcrowding, or as we're going into this new normal with the split schedules where the learners are only going to be allowed to be in the classrooms for their own safety for 2 days a week or maybe alternating weeks, that during this time the parents are going to continue to play a vital role in the education. Although thankfully, in my opinion, they will have the help now of some in-classroom training from people who do this from a living. So I think this pandemic has been very hard on the educators, but I think it's been also hard, at least in America, it's been hard on the parents because we as parents are not trained as educators. I'm a really decent software developer company runner, but when my kids needed help with their math, I was useless. And they're adults now, but years ago, I didn't remember any of my math. And so asking me to help with their education was a challenge. with SPLAT, we're going to show you today how we have some tools and some techniques that can empower the parents to facilitate their education. So a couple of just some a bit of funniness here. So the father asks the child, how's fifth grade from home working out? And I'll let you read the rest. Just stop for a minute. So I'll leave it up there. I'll keep talking in case you're still reading, but we think that we have a solution here that not only is going to help your students get through regular education, but also two other groups of learners that we are focused on. And those are a group of learners that have been identified at risk of dropping out. The term that has been used historically on this is SARDO, students at risk of dropping out. I prefer the terms learners at risk, or we call them LARS. And that's not a real deathbed term, but that's our internal term is LARS. We just think it's nicer. But these learners who are struggling to keep up are part of the constituent base of learners that we're focused on. There's a second constituent base of learners that we're also targeting, and those are your high achieving learners that may want to escape the speed of which their peers learn, and that they could achieve so much more if they just had more educational opportunities. So we want to help in the middle section of your classrooms, but we also want to help especially at the bottom end and the top end, because the bottom end are at risk of getting left behind, and the top end could go on and achieve amazing things for society as a whole if they are given the opportunity to learn more. So we're trying to cover all three grounds with this. So everything we're doing is being offered to the Philippine school systems for free. Both public and private is being offered completely for free for the rest of this school year, all of next school year, and our great hope is that we can continue to do this. So this is not a profit opportunity for us. We have made commitments and will honor those commitments to never sell, rent, share, monetize your learners' data in our system. So this is a true corporate social responsibility effort. It is my effort. I am the president. It is my money, along with some of my family members. I'm doing this because the Philippines has been very beneficial to my life, and I wanted to try to give something back. This quote on the screen from Madame Marie Curie, who was one of the principal finders of the X-ray, which has certainly changed medicine for everyone in the world to have the ability to see what's going on with people's bones, said this in a letter to her sister: "You cannot hope to build a better world without improving the individuals. To that end, each of us must work towards his own improvement and, at the same time, share a general responsibility for all humanity. Our particular duty being to aid those to whom we think we can be most useful." So someone asked me a bit ago, why am I doing this? It's a lot of money. We have over 100,000 developer hours in this software project just for the Philippines. And again, no expectation to get repaid. But I can help, and so I should help. Okay, so what is this piece of code that we've spent 100,000 developer hours working on that's called SPLAT? And it does two things primarily. The first of those two things, it's a school information system. And this was the part I talked about at first, where we're trying to reduce the administrative burden on your teachers and your teaching staff, and trying to communicate better with your families about how their learners are doing. And then with the onset of the wretched pandemic, we also wrote a learning management system which allows your learners to take home as part of their education on their gadgets without using the internet to conduct it. For your schools, we do attendance, including some school forms called an SF2 and an SF4, which as parents or parent community, you probably aren't aware of, but it's how DepEd communicates internally what the attendance is looking like. As parents, you probably don't know much about your learners' attendance because these forms, the SF2 and the SF4, are only generated once a month. With the software called SPLAT, we are recording on a daily basis whether the learners are in class, whether they were tardy, and whether they were cutting. And the way we define cutting, as I think DepEd does, is the learner shows up for periods 1, 2, and 3, then goes for a 3-hour lunch in the middle of the day, and then shows up at the end of the day so that they can pretend like they were there all day. But this problem of midday ditching, as we would call it in the United States, again, cutting in DepEd nomenclature, we think, we don't think, we have heard is a challenge. So for the parents of a SPLAT school, we send out an alert at 6 o'clock in the evening to the parents on Facebook Messenger or using our app, and potentially even a text message, although that's kind of expensive. So we try not to do that. But using Messenger or our app, we send out something so the parents can have that awkward discussion at dinner about where was their learner and why were they absent in the middle of the day. We have received requests from teachers to use our ability to take pictures into part of our app so the teachers can take pictures of the learners in the middle of the day at the internet cafes, because we have been told that the parents don't believe that their precious child was in fact at the internet cafe in the middle of the day, and the teachers need to prove it with a picture. So we are trying hard to make sure that the learners are in the school premises when they're supposed to be. Because if you're supposed to be in a classroom and you're not there, it's very challenging potentially to get educated. We've also reduced dramatically the amount of time and energy it takes for teachers to do gradebook, recording of grades. And we again share this with the families in our once a week broadcast message to all families. So for attendance, the families will only receive a broadcast if there's something out of the ordinary. So if you're a parent or a guardian and your learner was in class all day, you won't get a message from us. But at the end of every week, somewhere over the weekend, when our servers run through the data, we'll send a weekly summary to every parent and guardian about how their learner did during that week. And that summary will give a snapshot. And we're focused to our very core on trying to be positive. So we're not trying to shame the parents or shame the learners into better behavior. We are trying to accentuate and highlight the positive things that the learners have done during their week. That they did their seat works, that they participated in class, that they got grades that are what you would expect for that learner. We don't believe that every learner can be in the top 10% of their class, nor should they all necessarily be. But if that learner's tracking about the way they should be, then magnificent. But if a learner who is used to getting 80% on their scores all of a sudden starts getting 40% on their scores, then maybe there is something we need to highlight, because for that learner, things aren't going so well. So we send this all out to the parent community once a week. For the folks who work inside the schools, again, a big focus on automating the school forms, or SFs. We also have, and I'll show you in just a few minutes, 3 behavior modules that are the only piece of this software that is also sold in our United States version of the software. So it started off as a piece of software being sold and is currently being sold to schools in the United States. The only piece of this they buy from us are our 3 behavior modules. And that ties very nicely into Sir Elmer's chat from a minute ago. All of our software works in your schools with only occasional connectivity for your teachers. So your teachers can spend their whole day teaching in their classroom just using their gadgets, even though their classrooms may or may not have good internet, may or may not have access to the internet or laptops or smart boards in the room. If they do, that's amazing and wonderful. But if they don't, everything works beautifully on their gadget, and the teachers just need to synchronize at the beginning of the day and at the end of the day as they walk by perhaps the computer lab. With the pandemic, we brought out our learning management system, and that allows your learners to continue their education when they're not in the building. This is an asynchronous education system. And if these words aren't familiar to you yet, congratulations. You will wish someday that you never learned the difference between asynchronous and synchronous education. But this Zoom meeting is an example of a synchronous communication. We're all online, and if you weren't online right now, you wouldn't be hearing me. With asynchronous, things are recorded, they're, in our case, compressed way down, and then they're sent down to the learners' gadgets when they have internet, and then for the rest of the week, they don't need internet. Using our asynchronous software on their gadgets, we can send down to them rich text, which means things with fonts and colors and pictures, PDFs, videos. And as they're going through their learning material, watching videos of their teachers talking, for example, reading modules, answering questions and worksheets, we can check and see how they're doing. And again, on a sense of positivity, our software has been designed at every step to encourage the learners to keep going, but to keep going correctly. So we want to make sure that they're doing it right the first time. But again, trying not to shame, trying not to make them feel less wonderful, just that they got the answer wrong. Would you please try again? We also support having your learners take videos of their projects or pictures of their work. So if you have somebody in, say, junior high math class, pretty hard to type the quadratic equation. So we let them do it, show your work on a piece of paper, take a picture of it, and upload it to their teacher. As we go into this new mixed modality of hybrid learning, where you're in a classroom part day and you're not in a classroom part of your learning day, we have an excellent support for hybrid modality. And that isn't just for learners who spend part of their educational process in the classroom and part of it outside the classroom, because that may be with us for a long time due to school overcrowding. But this is also for those learners whose families cannot afford a gadget, because no one should be deprived of an education because of the economic status of their parents. So if you have classrooms where some of the learners have gadgets and some of them do not, we work with that beautifully. Because if their family doesn't have the ability to give them a gadget, and we'll talk about what that means, but we want to make sure that they get the same quality of education delivered with SPLAT in mind that the people who have gadgets. So a summary of how all this works: the teachers use the gadget in the classroom. Then they walk past an access point. The information from the gadget goes up to our servers. And just as a note here, I don't have some of the data privacy screens in this deck, but all of the learner data is stored exclusively inside the Philippine country. So this isn't going off to the cloud, wherever the cloud might be in foreign countries. No, all of your data is stored here. And if your schools should ever decide that they don't want to use this software, 100% of your data goes back to the schools. There are no long-term contracts. There are no contracts actually of any sort. There is no early exit. There's no commitments. You can come when you want, you can leave when you want, and we give you back. The school gets all their data back. If your teachers have laptops, if your teachers want to use this in the lab, the computer lab, that works beautifully there too. And you have learners who have a single gadget in the family, which we believe to be fairly common, that a family shares one gadget. The SPLAT works magnificently in that environment as well. So we can have a mom or a dad or another person in the family who is helping with the learner's education, maybe an ate or something. And that person is there helping manage the process. And then we can have multiple children in the family all receiving their distant education on the same SPLAT gadget. Now these gadgets, as I'll explain in a slide in a minute, they can be really, really old, slow phones. So we write, I'm looking around my desk for it here, I don't see it, but we write everything we do to run on a Cherry mobile phone that I bought at the mall a couple of years ago before the pandemic that I paid $1,006 for. it wasn't a very good phone the day I bought it, and it hasn't aged well. I mean, that poor old Cherry Mobile that we paid $1.6 was never a good phone, and it runs SPLAT beautifully. So our software runs on really old, really slow, really tired, really secondhand phones. And so your learners who want to avail of this software in their world, they don't need to go buy a brand new notebook or a brand new something. No, if they have a phone, we probably work on it. The learners have access to PisoNet or an internet cafe. Our software runs there as well. And for your parents, we'll communicate with them over Facebook Messenger. And if your school wants to share their Globe account and Smart account with us, we will also send out text messages. Your school administrative staff, your folks at your division, your supervisors at the district, they can all use SPLAT as well. We have things for them that are really, we think, quite interesting too. So we've already been through most of this. I'm going to skip down to the bottom of the first column. The 3 behavior modules we have recognize or give your teachers and your school staff the ability to recognize extraordinary positive behavior. Things like acts of kindness, good citizenship, things where a child has done something that makes a notice to an adult in the school who says, thank you. But this thank you is formal. And with those thank yous, the learner earns points. The learner can then take those points that they earn for their act of kindness or for their act of citizenship and trade them into the SPLAT store. And this isn't a sorry store, and we're not selling pencils. What's in our SPLAT store are a secondary enforcement or a reinforcement, if you will, of their good behavior. What we see in our US schools that seems to work very, very well on this is simple things. It's one of the most requested things from the SPLAT store in our US schools is a letter from the principal home to the parents, just saying that that learner had done something wonderful. And that's really heartwarming to me, that what the kids want to spend their points on is to make sure that their parents know that they did something great. I mean, isn't that cool? One of our 6th grade teachers in the US has some plushed animals up on a shelf on her wall. And when the learners earn enough points, that 6th grade teacher lets them be a parent to a stuffed animal for a day. So as a learner, I've earned enough points, I get to get the pink giraffe, and that pink giraffe gets to sit on my desk for a day, and they love that. And so the classroom is a more positive place. The learners are more engaged because they're trying to be good. They're trying to be really good so they can earn the points so that they can have a stuffed animal sit on their desk for a day. Costs nothing, it's all included. Sadly, you know, and I know that not every youth in school is going to be positive all the time. So we have a nice system for not so nice behavior. And that system allows you to document the behaviors that are disruptive to the school or to other persons. Our software is a little bit different in that not only are we documenting the disruptive or what we call unexpected behaviors, but in addition to documenting them, we're also documenting the situational pieces that may be useful for your school administrative staff to try to stop the problem. It's one thing to stop the symptoms, it's a different thing to try to stop the core. And so we allow the people who document this disruptive behavior to say, there was a bully who did something to another person. Not just the bully had 2 people standing behind him or her that were there as thugs, so to speak. Because we know that rarely are bullies there all by themselves. They often have backup. And so not just are we documenting that this behavior happened, we're also documenting where was this learner supposed to be when this happened? Is there a pattern on campus that one of the teachers is allowing their learners to roam like a pack of animals around, and that we need to stop the problem by getting that teacher to keep their kids in the room? Or was this happening during lunch period a lot, and maybe a little bit more supervision in the yard during lunch might have stopped this? So a strong focus in our software, and again, our exclusive focus in the United States, is to try to make the school environment a positive, loving, nurturing environment, not someone where your learners live in fear of a bully. Our third behavior module goes outside the school, and it allows your school to document and to escalate cries for help. This might be in the form of a young woman who comes to their subject teacher and confides that she's pregnant. This might be a person that comes in and crying because some Jeep driver harasses them every morning on the way to school. This might be because some sorry store is routinely, not giving the kids their change. These aren't really school problems in many cases, but that doesn't mean they shouldn't be documented and escalated. And so we have a system for that as well. Because if you are crying and you do need help, the last thing you want is that the people you cry to and ask for help lose it. Those are all optional. Your schools can turn them on and off as they wish, but they are there, part of the software for you. For your families, we, as I said, send out this weekly broadcast. In addition to that, as I'll show you on the app in just a moment, we are focusing on 4 metrics about how your learners are doing in their classrooms. And those metrics focus on attendance, as we've talked about, effort, which is, are they participating in class? Are they doing their seat works? Are they making an effort to become educated? Not every young person will go on to college. Not every young person should probably go on to college. But there's a big difference between intelligence and effort. And you might have a learner who is doing their best. They're working so hard. It's just that math isn't and may never be their thing. But maybe history is their thing and they're doing great over there, but they're trying hard in math. And we want to give you the tools to formally recognize and to share with their parents that this learner is doing their best. And that in and of itself is a reward. Then we talk about accomplishment, which are those nasty grades things, which are an important part of education. But we think effort and accomplishment deserve equal billing. So we give them equal billing. And then the behavior modules we've talked about. What we don't send home to the parents are the cries for help, because it may be, and I think often will be, that the family is the problem. So we want to be very judicious about how we send that home. But if they're doing extraordinary things at school, we want to highlight that to the parents. If they're being disruptive at school, we want to alert the parents to that as well. And then we've got our distance learning, which allows the learners to participate at home in their education, and the projects where they can show back to the school what they've done. Okay, there are 5 focuses that we have attacked when we talk about distance learning. The first of this is feedback. With feedback, I want to share a story of my children. Excuse me, I ran out of water. Okay. When my children were young, they had an amazing, amazing educator as a piano teacher. And she was so good. And we all remember the powerful, wonderful educators in our life. And this woman was a truly bright spot in my children's educational history. And I know this because I was sitting in the room during many of these piano lessons, but she had a saying, which I love and I repeat frequently, which is, practice doesn't make perfect. Practice makes permanent. And her thought was, if you practice it wrong all week, it's permanent. So we have embodied that philosophy. Practice doesn't make perfect, practice makes permanent. So as we send your learners home with work to do outside of the classroom where they don't have an adult guiding them, we've tried to put into the software tools and techniques to ensure that as your learners are going through the material, they're learning it correctly and they're practicing it perfectly, so that when they're done with all this, they get it. One of the ways we do this is in our worksheets. So they're going through a worksheet and they come to a question. If they answer it incorrectly, because worksheets are not graded, this is for knowledge reinforcement. If they answer a worksheet question incorrectly, we say, nope, not so much. And then we give the learner a hint. It says, this answer is on page 3, paragraph 4. Because again, this is not a graded, they can leave it and come back. They go back to page 3, they read paragraph 4, they come back to their worksheet, they answer correctly, but ding, they go on. But if, for whatever reason, they still don't get it on the second attempt, we show them the correct answer so that they learn it correctly and they can continue on. I've talked about old, slow, cherry mobile phones, but it's just so important. Everyone deserves a good education. It's not just the law, it's so important. And so we've tried to make sure that we're not part of the problem, we're part of the solution. Learners being left behind, these children that may be in the Sardo or Lars worlds, we're trying aggressively to help them accelerate their education and get caught back up with their peers. One of the ways that we do this in a school that's using SPLAT is to show the teachers how the children are doing. We know which pages they have clicked through on the material. We even know how many seconds they answer each question, it took to answer each question on a test. We don't show that anywhere, but we know it under the covers. So we're trying aggressively to make sure that they're engaged and paying attention as much as we can, and they're keeping up and they're not getting left behind. Because getting left behind, it's hard to get caught up. Many people have asked us, how are we going to keep cheating down? You've got all these kids in their homes, they've got cell phones, aren't they all going to cheat? And I would hope not. Education's for them, it's not for you. Education isn't for the teachers, it's for the kids, but I don't think they get that sometimes. But yes, we have addressed this. We rotate the questions on graded activities so that my question number 1 is my buddy's question number 5 and my other buddy's question number 12. And since our questions don't have numbers, they can't just sit there and shout out. So, the smart kid in the room goes fast and goes, okay, number 1 is A, number 2 is C, number 3 is D, like that, because my question 1 is not my friend's question number 1. So the first thing we're going to have to do to cheat, we've all got to find the same question. So what year did something happen? We've all got to go next, back until we find the same question. Then, once we get to the right question, our answers are in a different order too. So someone's shouting out a question. What year did such and such happen? We all find the question, and then the smart person in the room has to start shouting out the correct answer. We all have to read through our answers in different orders to find the correct answer. So that is so slow. You don't know how slow it is until you try it. But the other thing that accidentally just happened is that at least for a moment, the kids who weren't paying attention so much at least heard out loud what the question was and what the correct answer was. Maybe, just maybe, accidentally, they learned something. But they didn't learn anything from knowing that 1 is A and 2 is B, but they did learn from knowing what the question was and what the answer was, spoken out loud by their friends. So while we've tried really hard to slow down cheating for your learners, we've tried really, really hard to speed up education delivery for your teachers. So we make it very easy for your teachers to share their work lessons, their distance learning content. They can share it in their school, in their division, in their region. And we have, I think you may find this exciting as well, we have a very nice quality assurance system built right into SPLAT. So the teacher who writes these modules can send it up to the division's CID team for formal approval before it gets released to the learners. So we built a quality assurance step into the delivery of distance education that I think will really help the quality be what you would expect of the quality from the public school system. Access to internet, always going to be a factor. I've seen photographs of a whole barangay's worth of kids sitting in the street outside the barangay hall because that was the only place they could get internet signal. And while that may occasionally be necessary, it's probably not the best place to be educated. So learners can go to their barangay hall, synchronize, and then go back to their homes and do the education there, and then just wander over to the barangay hall to resync. But if they don't have a barangay hall with an internet access point and they have to use their load, we've tried super hard to keep that as low as we can humanly do. So we can deliver an entire week's worth of education to a learner's phone for about 300 megabytes. or megabits rather. That's not much. Now, if I'm on a Zoom call, which I do a lot of, and I speak for about an hour with a slide deck like this, I use about 100 megs per hour. We're using 300 megs for an entire week of material. That's in tests and all that other stuff. It's just 300 megs per week. So we're trying super hard to not burn up your teacher's load. We're trying super hard not to burn up your learner's load. Okay. As I said, we're focused on 3 groups at your schools. The folks who are struggling at the bottom, the folks that want to sprint ahead at the top, and the folks in the middle. When this wretched pandemic is finally over, oh, won't that be nice? Our SPLAT courses, our distance learning module is going to be there for your accelerated learners. But not just them. If you have children who are required by their families to work as part of the families, because we know this is reality, that they might have to go home at noon and tend the sorry store, because that's an important part of the family's revenue and somebody needs to be there. But your youth will be able to take their education home with them and sit there tending the sorry store, but between customers, put on their earbuds, listen to lectures, go through material, learn material correctly the first time, and go through their tests. If your schools are overcrowded, which we believe some of yours are, and you have reduced scheduling, this will continue to be good. Some of our schools, I'm not sure at Muntinlupa this is happening yet, but we've got a lot of our schools experimenting with what's called flipped learning. And you may find it's an interesting philosophy. It's at flippedlearning.org. And if you have people who have escaped the formal school system and want to come back and try again, everything we're doing is not just free for the people who are in the K through 12 world. Your ALS programs can use everything we're doing as well for free. And as a bonus, everything we've done for the youth, we now have released out there so the teachers can have an educational system that does the same goodness that we've done for the kids.
Okay, let us proceed to the awarding of certificate to our second speaker. Thank you very much, Sir Christopher, for enlightening us about SPLAT, School and Classroom Management Software. And of course, to Mr. Ray and Ryan Padilla for answering our participants' queries. I shall now present the Certificate of Recognition. Allow me to read the citation: Republic of the Philippines, Department of Education, National Capital Region, Schools Division, Office of Muntinlupa City. Certificate of Recognition is awarded to Christopher Hancock for having served as resource speaker during the project collaboration of Learning as Partners in the delivery of quality learning in New Normal via SPLAT, held on March 4, 2022 at the Schools Division Office of Muntinlupa. Given this 4th day of March 2022 in Muntinlupa City, signed Domenico C. Idanan, CESO 5, Schools Division Superintendent. Thank you very much, sir. And God bless you.
And I really appreciate being invited to this. This has been a true honor to be here with you all, and I am touched by your willingness to work with us. This is lots of fun. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Sir Chris. Thank you very much for explaining the SPLAT system, and thank you very much for joining us this morning.